I want you to hit me as hard as you can.
Christopher Reeve's Superman has always been a symbol of hope. I say this to remind you of all the good things that Reeve's Superman provided us over the years. Because it's time to get into the bad. In today's DC Revisited, we're looking at the film that briefly ended the franchise with Superman 4: The Quest for Peace. Ilya and Alexander Salkind were the shepherd of the Superman series since the beginning. Their love for the character and control of all aspects has been well documented in this series so far. But with the failures of both Superman 3 and Supergirl, the Salkinds began to question their involvement. Taking a break from the superhero genre, they produced Santa Claus the Movie, which was also a commercial failure. Under intense financial pressure, and thinking the superhero genre had run its course, the Salkinds sold the rights to the character at the Cannes Film Festival to the Canon Film Group. If you're not quite aware of the Canon Film Group, let's do a brief summary. Canon dominated the cheap movie scene in the 80s. Headed by MENAHEM GOLAN, Canon was producing upwards of 40 films a year. And how did they manage that when other much larger studios produced considerably less? Well, by keeping their budgets absolutely microscopic. If you wanted your movie made cheap, then they were your people. So you could say that Superman was now in questionable hands. Christopher Reeve had been so angry at the handling of Superman 3 and wasn't comforted by the efforts of Supergirl, that it was still a question of whether or not he would even return to the role. Without a script in mind, the new producers approached Reeve with the idea that he would be able to craft the story himself. Not only that, but they would produce whatever he wanted for his next movie, and he would get a significant pay bump. And suddenly, like magic, Reeve had a change of heart, and was on board to return. But there were still many other elements that needed to be in place. Thanks for watching DC Films Revisited. If you enjoy our shows, please subscribe to our channel right now. Like this video and click on the bell so you can be notified each time a new video comes up. Now, back to the show. Superman 2 and 3 director Richard Lester moved on from the directing gig, wanting to try something else. Reeve really wanted to step behind the camera himself, and even ended up directing some second unit stuff. But he was ultimately looked at as too inexperienced. Instead, eyes fell on Swamp Thing director Wes Craven. Craven was desperate to widen his portfolio and thought the superhero film could really showcase his talent. Unfortunately, star Christopher Reeve failed to get along with him and insisted he be replaced before filming got underway. Having just directed the film Iron Eagle starring Lou Gossett Jr., SIDNEY J. FURIE was brought aboard to direct. Cannon believed he could make an action movie for a reasonable budget, which was his main selling point. While FURIE would jump at the opportunity, the highly stressful production nearly tanked his career. When it came to crafting a story, Cannon targeted young screenwriters Mark Rosenthal and Lawrence Connor, who had just written the box office hit The Jewel of the Nile, starring Michael Douglas and Kathleen Turner. Their understanding of both action and comedy made them the perfect candidates for a Superman film. Given his activism at the time, Reeve wanted the film to involve disarming the world of nuclear arms. The Cold War was still a hot-button topic, so all of the pieces seemed to align, even if it was a little on the nose. The story would entail Superman ridding the world of all of its nuclear arms and hurling them into the sun. Lex Luthor would return as the villain and create an evil clone of Superman named Nuclear Man, which he would then have to defeat. It's a pretty basic story, but after the failure of Superman 3, getting back to the basics wasn't necessarily a bad thing. But Reeve wasn't the only one that had a bad time on Superman 3, and therefore didn't want to return. Lois Lane herself, Margot Kidder, had to be convinced that her role would be more significant than just a cameo. She grew to regret this decision though, as her and Reeve often butted heads on set. She claimed Reeve's ego was out of control due to his having a hand in the story. The rest of the Daily Planet cast was brought back, with Jackie Cooper returning as Perry White and Mark McClure as Jimmy Olsen, but their scenes were brief. Miraculously, they were able to bring Gene Hackman back, and he seems to relish in the silliness going on around him. But they make the odd decision of cutting out most of his material. Originally in the first act, he was supposed to have failed attempts at making a nuclear man. He even creates this kind of Neanderthal version that is wearing, well, not much of anything. I'm going to assume they cut this scene because it's very distracting for a kids movie. Instead of bringing back Ned Beatty or Valerie Perrin, the studio wanted someone younger as Lex's sidekick. So John Cryer was cast as Lex's nephew, Lenny. Cryer had just starred as Ducky in Pretty in Pink, so he was a huge get for them. He'd probably second-guess this decision though once Christopher Reeve told him during production that the film would be terrible. But it was a good opportunity at the time. Originally, the writers wanted Christopher Reeve to play Nuclear Man, since he was supposed to be a clone of Superman. They felt this could further show off Reeve's dynamic range and make for a more interesting villain. But ultimately, this was nixed in favor of casting first-time English actor Mark Pillow. In order to forgo Pillow's accent and show the connection to Luthor, Hackman actually dubbed over all of Nuclear Man's lines.
No, you have my voice.
Feeling that they needed another female lead, MARIEL Hemingway was brought in as the daughter of the new Daily Planet owner. Her character, Lacey Warfield, is an uppity New Yorker who has clearly been given everything by her father her entire life. Nuclear Man was originally supposed to have this weird obsession with Lacey that was an interesting through line. However, with all of the cuts, most of this ended up on the cutting room floor. So his kidnapping of Lacey really comes out of nowhere. And somebody probably should have told them that there's no gravity in space. The budget of the film was originally intended to be $36 million, which was similar to Superman 3. However, just before filming, Canon entered intense financial turmoil and slashed the budget down to a mere $17 million. At less than half the budget of the prior films, Superman 4 was doomed from the get-go. Many key production members from the Superman series had been replaced by inexperienced Israeli crew that Canon provided. One of the most egregious examples of budget cuts is the scene where Superman goes to the United Nations. What should be 1,000 extras in the middle of a bustling city as Superman walks up the steps of the UN is downgraded to Superman walking in front of a few people and some pigeons on his way to an auditorium. It's very distracting. The effects work here can best be described as muddy. Every effect shot is so dark and inconsistent. Christopher Reeve's suit always looks faded against the dark backdrop of space. I mean, if this can even be considered space, because most of the time it's just black with no stars. Then there's the repeat shots. Trying to save more money, they constantly repeated flying shots and just stuck them in front of a different location. It becomes very distracting when they use it multiple times within a minute. I didn't edit that. That is literally just the same shot repeated over and over. Yikes. Usually the opening credits of a Superman film are a sight to behold. They are grand and epic, an absolute spectacle. So here we have, the complete opposite of that. This weird crayon-looking text is what we receive instead, with little to no flourishes outside of the strange particle trail on the text. It serves as a warning for what's to come. While the production was rather schlocky, the writers still did their best to create a compelling story. They brought Clark back to Smallville, where his mother had passed, and he has to decide what's to be done with the farm. It's a surprisingly grounded problem for someone dealing with such extraordinary circumstances. But the budget cuts reared their head yet again, and rather than filming on the original Kent farm, which was still available in Canada, they shot outside of England at a farm that looked nothing like the original one. Yet another disconnect. Remember that scene from Superman 2 where Clark kisses Lois and she forgets pretty much the entire movie? Lois doesn't. Well, bad jokes aside, that power was brought back in this one, and he takes Lois's memory yet again. But it seems they really wanted to up Superman's game and gave him even more abilities. Yes, he can repair structures just by looking at them. Superman, contractors hate him.
I'm sorry, Lois, but an emergency's come up. I'll have to go.
There's a lot of potential with the double date between Superman and Lois and Clark and Lacey. In the hands of someone like Richard Donner, or heck, even Richard Lester, this would have been a comedy of errors with many close calls and tension of Clark being found out. Yet what's provided is just a slow-paced look at two women trying to date this guy. There's no fun miscommunication or anything. Clark doesn't even really seem like he's struggling much with the juggling act. The original edit of the film was 134 minutes and edited down to 89 minutes. This meant a ton of stuff ended up on the cutting room floor. What's left is, as Rosenthal described it, a nonsensical mess. Take this scene of Lex stealing a single strand of Superman's hair. We see it holding up a 1,000-pound weight. Must be pretty strong, right? Apparently not. Or else those shears are made from kryptonite. But why on earth would so much of the film be cut down? Well, a negative screening in Southern California of the 134-minute version caused Cannon to rethink the film. This is the only time this version of the film was shown, and it was thought to be lost for many years. While it's unclear if this version would have been higher quality, according to Rosenthal, it actually made sense, which was better than the film we got. Original Star Trek composer Alexander Courage was brought in to do the music. Thankfully, Courage mostly sticks to adapting the Williams score, so the film still sounds distinctly Superman. But it's really hard not to feel bad for all the creative people involved in this production. It's clear that they just wanted to continue the Superman legacy properly, but the budget from Cannon just would not allow that to happen. Superman 4: The Quest for Peace opened in the United States on July 24, 1987. While past films had a strategy of staggered releases, this was released in most territories in July. And while Warner Brothers was in charge of the film's domestic release, Cannon headed up international distribution. This meant the film had significantly less reach than the other Superman films, and resulted in a total box office of just $36 million. Word of mouth probably didn't help. We can be quite thankful for Superman 4's failure because it caused the Cannon Group to abandon their plans to produce a Spider-Man film. It's not hard to imagine how that one would have turned out. In fact, after a ton of failures, Cannon would go bankrupt just 7 years later. This resulted in the Superman rights reverting back to their original owners, Alexander and Ilya Salkind. Oh, thank God, people who actually care about the character. The film has often been regarded as the red-headed stepchild of the Superman series. Reeve described it as simply a catastrophe from start to finish, which is hard to disagree with. While the film is included in the big Superman motion picture anthology Blu-ray set, it easily has the least amount of supplemental material compared to the other films. But where it impresses are the deleted scenes. 30 of the 40 minutes of the film that were cut out after the disastrous California screening can be found here. And they're a very interesting look into what the film could have been. While the effects work is clearly still very poor, you can see why everyone agreed to do this movie in the first place. It was a good story that was simply lost in the name of penny pinching. While we've discussed all the cameos these Superman actors have had on the show Smallville, the biggest return to the franchise was actually Jon Cryer. He would return to the DC universe as Lex Luthor in the CW show Supergirl, and as the official Lex for the Arrowverse. So you could say that Lenny got quite the glow up. Unfortunately, 1995 saw Christopher Reeve become paralyzed from a tragic accident. And with this came the end of his Superman character. But Reeve still represented the same symbol of hope as he did when he donned the red and blue tights. His activism and drive were inspirations to not only the disabled community, but to society as a whole. His death in 2004 was not only saying goodbye to a wonderful person and actor, but it was saying goodbye to the first person that made us believe a man can fly. As our time with Christopher Reeve's Superman draws to a close, another superhero looms large. But that's a tale for next time. Join us, same movie time, same movie channel,